what I'm laying out here today is obviously a multi-generation vision. One of the things that we have to do is inspire those future generations. And so today I'm announcing that Blue Origin is founding the Club for the Future, whose mission is to inspire young people to build the future of life in space. So we're going to ask K through 12 students to send us postcards with their dreams of the future. And then we're going to send them to space in New Shepard, bring them back and mail them back to you.
We're from Blue Origin. We are going to be sending some postcards to space. And we really wanted to bring that access to students to inspire them.
I'm interested in space medicine and space exploration, so I have a futuristic city with a rocket launching, and it's going to be a giant caduceus on the top, which is a symbol for medicine.
Mine has a person standing on the moon, and it says the future is only a tomorrow away, because if we build the future, we have to do it a day at a time.
Wow, that's really poetic. That's really cool.
Today we're loading the Club for the Future postcards into payload lockers, and those are going to be loaded into the crew capsule. We've got thousands of postcards that are going to fly on New Shepard.
And it's this generation's job to build that road to space so that the future generations can unleash their creativity. The kids I talked to earlier, if they are representative of the current generation, we are in good shape.
Make your way to the hatch. Flight astronauts are ingressing the cabin. Copy.
We started the New Shepard program with a clean sheet. We said we need to carry people to space. What are all the possibilities? We went through 110 different iterations and designs
to eventually arrive at a fairly similar rocket to what Alan Shepard flew on. That was the right way to send people to space.
The New Shepard flight profile, boost, and then re-entry of the propulsion module, and a very controlled landing that had never been done before.
The onboard computer already has all of the algorithms and all of the code it needs to know how to steer it back. The key feature, being able to do everything autonomously, allowed us to do all these flights that we've done with great success. Shape for the crew capsule, we knew it had to be big enough to hold all the systems that would keep the crew safe. But we also knew that we wanted enough room to be able to really enjoy the weightlessness. We knew we wanted to have enough room for people to do a somersault. And then focused on the size of the windows. let people really experience being just a window pane away from outer space and being able to see the blackness of space and the beauty of Earth. That would be an incredibly exciting moment, that's for sure.
Common to all of those configurations that we would not compromise on were not just that it's safe, but that it's comfortable and that it's life-changing. For New Shepard, we've been following an aggressive step-by-step approach from the beginning. The first time we flew New Shepard, we demonstrated every single aspect, re-entry, parachute deployment, and that mission was 100% successful for the capsule. M2 was about rolling in changes and trying it again. This time we stuck the landing, but we needed to show we could do it again. So that was what M3 was. For M4, we pushed the envelope, lighting the engine just seconds before it would impact the ground, and we perfected it at that time. In M5, we intentionally did not deploy one of the main parachutes, and it worked perfectly. We had done a pad escape test that the capsule can launch and escape if there is an accident on the pad. The M6 mission was about testing that at its most stressing condition. We ignited the solid rocket motor in flight and showed that we can recover the capsule safely. For M7, what we introduced was a new capsule design. M8 was just a repeat, and then the third escape test was to show that we could escape in space. So on M9, the capsule laid off its solid rocket motor and landed safely. M9 and M13, we are flying payload missions for customers, giving us even more and more confidence in the capability of the New Shepard system. 13 was a perfect flight, preparing for the M14 mission, another verification and check. This approach led to our first human flight, a completely nominal flight with our first ever human passengers. And for each operational human flight, we will continue to learn and improve our approach to safety.
Astronaut!
At Club for the Future, we get to inspire youth to really give them that connection and love for space. Club for the Future has a superpower where we get to literally tap into rocket scientists, aerospace architects, and people who are not only just dreaming the future, but they're out there building it. So our very first mission is send a postcard to space. All 7 continents and well over 100 countries have participated. And so that little moment where they realize this postcard has taken that journey that they're going to have the opportunity to take also one day, it clicks and they're hooked. I can just think of one word, hope. I see this entire generation that's going to be part of something far, far bigger than I am.
Y'all, we had over 600 different questions to ask the expert today. So, without further ado, let's take a look and see what some of you all had to ask our expert today.
Hey Team Blue, I was wondering, how long do you think until humans colonize another planet?
Hey Team Blue, how long do you guys go up into space?
Hey Team Blue, when you're on the moon or another planet, can you see another planet in the distance? I'm really curious.
Hi Team Blue.
What does it feel like without gravity?
And why can't you take off your suits whenever you're in space?
Hey Team Blue, is it true that you have to train to use the vacuum in space?
Hey Team Blue, is it true that space is completely silent? If so, how is that possible?
Hey Team Blue, my question is, do you guys take showers while you guys are up in space?
Hey Team Blue, my question is, what do astronauts eat in space? How do they preserve the food that they have?
Hey Blue Team, do you ever get bored in space?
Hello Team Blue, my question is, what does the Earth look like when you go to space?
Hey Team Blue, have you ever tried tap dancing in space? What would it be like?
My question is, how does it feel when you take off on a rocket ship?
Hey Team Blue, how many planets can you see once you get in space?
Hey Team Blue, how heavy is a spacesuit?
Hey Team Blue, my question is, when you're coming down from space, is your ship? Is the spaceship programmed to come back to the space where it got launched, or does it randomly land somewhere?
Hey Team Blue, I want to know, what does it look like in space?
Hello, and welcome to the Blast Off Bluegrass Kickoff event. We are so happy to have everyone watching our live stream today. My name is Amy Johns, and I'm the Associate Director of Instructional Technology at Fayette County Public Schools. Today, I am joining you from STEAM Academy in Lexington, where we have several classes participating in the room next door. We are excited to announce our partnership today with Club for the Future to help bring knowledge and opportunities related to space travel and careers to our students in Fayette County, as well as students across the state of Kentucky. Today's event is just the beginning, and you are one of more than 8,000 students in our district who is participating. Throughout today's event, you will have the opportunity to meet and hear from individuals at Club from the Future and Blue Origin who are actively involved in creating a future that involves space exploration and careers for people just like you. The possibilities are truly endless, and we know that students from Kentucky will be a significant part of our future of life in space. So to get us started, I would like to introduce retired NASA astronaut Michael Good as our first guest speaker. Mr. Good is from Broadview Heights, Ohio, which is about 4.5 hours from Lexington. He has multiple degrees in aerospace engineering from Notre Dame. He began his career in the Air Force, where he served as a pilot and had the opportunity to fly and test the B-2 stealth bomber. In 2000, he was selected as a mission specialist by NASA, where he completed 2 space shuttle missions and went on to serve as a NASA liaison to Air Force Space Command. In 2019, he transitioned to Blue Origin to support commercial space flight and is currently serving as Director of Crew Integration. At this time, I would like to welcome Mr. Good and thank him for sharing his experience as a real-life astronaut and as someone who is helping others travel in space. Mr. Good?
All right, well, thanks, Amy. I really appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to speak and answer questions at this Blast Off Bluegrass event today. Let me share my screen here so I can show you some pictures about what it was like to fly in space. Can you guys see those pictures okay? All right, I'm getting the thumbs up here. So yeah, I was pretty honored and humbled when Amy asked me to speak to you guys about flying in space, but I was surprised that she wanted me to talk about 2 of my favorite summer vacations. They were both relatively short trips, about 25 days total, but I traveled over 10 million miles in 383 orbits around the Earth. We started out in this van, but then we ended up taking this vehicle. Now, seriously, that was a joke a little bit, but I'd like to share with you guys for a couple minutes my trips to the Hubble Space Telescope in May of 2009, and then to the International Space Station in 2010, both on board the Space Shuttle Atlantis. Let's see if I can get rid of this. So this was my dream, to become an astronaut, launch into space on the Space Shuttle, and go explore our universe. A little bit about my background. As Amy said, I started out flying jets in the Air Force, and then I went on to the Air Force's test pilot school, where I was able to combine my passion for flying with my engineering background. And from there, I gained the experience needed just to be eligible to apply and compete for a position with NASA as an astronaut. After 3 applications, I was lucky enough just to get an interview, and I ended up getting selected as an astronaut back in 2000. So here I am on the 195-foot level on the launch tower, waiting my turn to get loaded into the space shuttle on my first mission. Now, when my name was called, I moved into the white room here, which is just outside the side hatch of the space shuttle. In this picture, we're on the launch pad, so the space shuttle's nose is up in this picture. It's at this point I realized there is no turning back. There's a couple of guys here helping me get my harness on, but note how the guy with the number 1 on his back, he's actually guarding the door to make sure I don't change my mind and try to make a run for it here. So I'm going to go through that side hatch next and into the vehicle where I'll strap in to my parachute and the seat on the flight deck. There we go. As the countdown reaches 0 and those solid rocket motors light, there's 8 bolts that explode that are holding us down on the launch pad, and the shuttle is on its way. And even though we weigh 4.5 million pounds sitting there on the launch pad, there's 7.5 million pounds of thrust when all those engines light. So once that happens, we're definitely going somewhere. It's a pretty quick ride to orbit. It's only 8.5 minutes. And we go, then the main engine's cut off, and we go from 3 Gs getting pushed back into our seat to floating in space for the next couple weeks. So on my first mission, we went to service the Hubble Space Telescope. And finally, on flight day 3, we get our first view of Hubble. Here it is flying over the Sahara Desert. It's a beautiful sight, and it looked great after 19 years in space. And this is back in 2009. So now it's been up there for over 31 years, and it's been over 12 years since we were up there and serviced it. Once we get closer, Megan, our robotic arm operator, she used the arm to go out and grab Hubble and bring it down into our payload bay here. And then this became our garage that we went out and worked on it over the next 5 days on some spacewalks. On my second mission, we went to the International Space Station, and it was beautiful too, and its size was just amazing. And this is a pretty unique shot of showing it with the space shuttle docked to the stack. Here's another shot after we undocked, and we did a fly around and then headed back to Earth. For me, the highlights of both my missions were the spacewalks. This is what I had dreamed about, going outside in my spacesuit and climbing around on the outside of the International Space Station, or floating over to Hubble and grabbing onto the handrails, opening the doors and actually climbing inside to work on the various scientific instruments and equipment. So here I am, I'm on the end of the robotic arm using a power tool to loosen up these bolts on the fixed head star tracker so that we can open up those doors. I mean, power tools in space, what a great job, huh? As fun as it was outside, we were happy that they finally let us back inside. And finally, I could get out of my spacesuit, come back inside the middeck to rejoin the crew. And we quickly had to change back into our clothes and get back to work because we had to swap out the tools and the spacesuits and get ready for the next day's spacewalks. But this is a neat shot that I love of this middeck on the space shuttle. I mean, in space, there's no up or down. So notice the orientation of some of these things. So there's a laptop over here, and there's a printer just stuck to the back wall. So there's no up or down. So you could just float over to that laptop and type on it, and the printer doesn't weigh anything in space, so we could just stick it on the back wall with a little bit of Velcro. I thought on my Hubble mission, getting to float around the middeck was a lot of fun. But once we got to station, it's so big that you could actually fly through the space station like Superman. And we had time to take some pictures up there, just to look out the window, take in the view, and take some pictures. And the view from space is just unbelievably beautiful. People often ask me, what was it like? What did it look like? And it's hard to describe, and these pictures don't really capture all the colors and the amazing glory of God's creation. But this is what it was like. Here's a sunrise from space. We're going around the Earth once every 90 minutes at 17,500 miles an hour. So we got to see 16 sunrises and sunsets every 24-hour day. Luckily, we had some time to take more pictures inside and kind of document our trip to space. We got to perform some of what I like to call stupid astronaut tricks. So here's just a ball of water that's floating in front of my face. And so I could use my drink bag and just kind of squeeze out some of the water from the straw. And it's not going to fall onto the floor and make a mess. It's just going to float there in a blob. And so you can kind of play with it. You could put a little orange juice in there if you want to kind of make it colorful. And you could blow it, just kind of blow it around the cabin there. And then when you're done playing with it, you just get your straw out and you put it in there and suck it down. It's pretty easy to clean up. At the end of the long day, it's time for bed. So we would just hook our sleeping bags up to the wall or the ceiling. It didn't really matter where. You hop in your sleeping bag and you zip it up and you literally float off to sleep. So while I was on orbit, I got to celebrate the 25th anniversary of my commissioning in the Air Force. It was an honor for me to fly as an active duty officer, and it was certainly an honor to join you here today. So Godspeed to you all as you journey through life and pursue your dreams. And as I'm doing here in the picture, I salute you. So Amy, I'll stop sharing, and I'm kind of looking forward to just talking more about what you guys want to talk about and take some of your questions.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Good, for sharing your story. It's an incredible one. But we would like to take an opportunity to give some of our students a chance to ask some questions. So our first question today comes from Leanne and Sharon at Lafayette High School.
My question is, I want to know how your body actually reacts when you're in space. And my question is, I want to know if you experience any physical changes when you come back.
Yeah, for sure. I talked about when you get to space, one of the coolest things about being in space is that there's no gravity. So you get to float around the whole time you're up there. So that's pretty fun. It was actually more fun than I expected. But it does have an impact on your body because you're not walking around, you're not using your muscles and your bones like you normally do here on Earth with gravity. And so you lose muscle mass while you're up there, and you lose bone mass, bone density, because your bones just aren't, every day here on Earth, your bones are regenerating, you're making new bone. But up there, your body says, you're not using them. I don't really need to make new bones. So you lose that bone density. So when you come back down to Earth, you have to go through some physical therapy and get your strength back. And the other thing that we've learned is that we know now that we have to exercise while we're in space. So we do exercise in space. We do aerobic exercise. There's a treadmill up there that you can run on. And if you think about that, it's a little bit harder to do that in space than here on the ground, because the first step you take on the treadmill, you just go flying off of it. So you actually have to wear kind of a harness with bungees that are pulling you back to the ground every step you take. So it's not quite as much fun as it is here on Earth to run, but you can do it. And then we also have resistive exercises that we can do to keep our muscles strong up in space. But again, you can't just lift weights because they don't weigh anything, So you have to use like more of a resistive exercise machine that uses hydraulics or bungees or things like that. So that's what it's like. It definitely has an impact on your body, though.
Great. Those are things I think we wouldn't necessarily think about, that you can't lift weights in space. So our next question is coming from Gabriel at Julius Marks Elementary.
Hey, Team Blue.
Do you guys shower in space, and how do you shower in space?
Hey, thanks, Gabriel. That's it's a little bit different in space. We don't take a shower like you would here on Earth. In fact, it's more like taking a bath, but without the bathtub. So it's more of a what we call a sponge bath. So you can have maybe a washcloth, and we have a little hose where we can squirt water onto that washcloth and get it wet and put a little bit of soap on there. And we actually have some special soap that's called no rinse soap. So you can use the soap and no rinse shampoo to wash your hair. And then you don't have to rinse it off with water. You can just leave it on. It just dries, and it doesn't really leave a lot of the soapy, you don't have soap suds all over you that you have to rinse off. So it's definitely a little bit different, but it takes longer than it would. It's a lot easier here on Earth just to jump in the shower and rinse off. And so it's a little bit more challenging to stay clean, but it's important to, you don't want to be too smelly or dirty up there with all your friends that you're flying with. So they appreciate if you stay as clean as possible.
Great question, Gabriel. Our next question is coming from Drew at Crawford Middle School.
Hey Team Blue, I have a question for you. How long will it be before we colonize Mars?
Yeah, hey Drew, that's a tough one. It's going to be a few years, and actually it's not going to be me that goes to Mars. It's going to be you guys that go to Mars. You're the next generation of explorers. I think our next step is actually not even to go to Mars, but it's to go back to the moon. And so we have plans to go back to the moon and land the first woman and the next man on the moon in the next few years, in this decade. And then what's important about that is that we'll learn more about how to build a base, how to live, and how to exist. Because when we go to Mars, that's a long way off. It's a long way to get there. We can get to the moon in 3 or 4 days, but to get to Mars right now, it takes about 6 months. And then once you get there, you can't just turn around and come back, because you literally have to wait for the planets to align and get in the best. We're all going around the sun at different rates. So it ends up being, to go to Mars would be about a 2-year mission minimum. So that's a long trip, and so we have a lot to learn before we're ready to do that. So I would say it's out in the 2030s somewhere at the earliest. But again, it's going to be you guys that are going to Mars, not me.
And I will definitely be excited to see our students as some of the first that will be making that trip. So that's exciting to think about. Our next question is coming from Dakaya.
How is a spaceship so strong to fly into space without falling?
Hey, Dakaya. Yeah, it's a pretty challenging engineering problem to, how do we make a rocket, go up into space? One of the way to do it really is that you have to get going really fast. I talked earlier about we were going around the Earth once every 90 minutes at 17,500 miles an hour. So we need to break away from the Earth and Earth's gravity. Initially, we need all these powerful rocket engines. I talked about all the thrust that you need to lift that rocket. And so those rocket engines have to have more thrust, which is the force that they use to overcome the force of gravity. So we need more thrust than we have gravity to allow us to accelerate up into space and get there. So to do that, we're sitting at 0 miles an hour on the launch pad, and we've got to get up to 17,500 miles an hour. So there's a lot of acceleration, and that's why as we're going to space, we're getting pushed back into our seats and just accelerating like you would on the fastest roller coaster you've ever been on. So it's all about going fast, and to get into a low Earth orbit, you have to hit that magic speed, which is orbital velocity. And at that point, you're actually just falling around the Earth. the rocket is always trying to fall back to the center of the Earth. But if you're going fast enough, you actually just follow the curvature of the Earth. You know, it's like imagine if you're standing on the ground and you throw a baseball. You know, what happens? It goes like this, but then it's going to fall back to the Earth, right? Well, imagine if you were standing on the top of a mountain and you threw that baseball again. And so from the top of the mountain, it would actually go down the mountain quite a ways before it hit the ground again, but it's still going to want to go back to the ground. But if you could throw that baseball really, really fast, it would actually just keep going around the Earth. You know, again, it's trying to fall back to the center of the Earth, but it's actually just falling around the Earth, around the curvature of the Earth, if you can get it going fast enough. So that's a little bit about how rockets work. So I know it's a great question, but it's a complicated engineering problem to make all that happen.
All right, our next student question comes from Jane Way at the School for the Creative and Performing Arts at Bluegrass.
What is something that you really want to see in space that maybe no man that's ever gone to space has seen before?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'll tell you, one of the coolest things that I got to see in space, you know, and I'd seen pictures of, you know, what the Earth looked like from space. And so, you know, as you look out the windows, it's like, oh, okay, this kind of looks like the pictures. It's kind of what I expected. But one of the things I didn't expect was, and that was really cool, was to see lightning from space. So when you see a thunderstorm here on Earth, you see, you know, you see that flash of lightning and then you hear the thunder. But from up in space, you know, we could see 1,000 miles to the horizon. So you could see the entire storm. And so you don't just see one flash of lightning at a time. You can see like a dozen flashes all going off at once. It's like being at the baseball stadium on opening day and everybody's taking pictures and you just see all those flashes going pop, 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 pop. So you look down at the Earth and there's just all these lightning flashes and they're going down to the ground and they're going between the clouds. And it's just an amazing sight to see the whole storm in one picture. And that's something that you can't really get from just somebody taking a picture from space. You almost need that video to be able to see that. So that was something that was really exciting to me. I think as we venture further and further away from Earth, it's going to be really cool to like the last question about Mars. You know, when are we going to go to Mars? To be able to see, you know, one of these planets up close, you know, firsthand. I know we've sent robots and rovers and they're, you know, sending back some really cool pictures. But to me, I think that's going to be pretty cool to be able to see one of the other planets in our solar system, you know, and put your boots on the ground and get to kind of check it out.
All right, we have one more question in person. This is coming from Franklin here at STEAM Academy. Franklin?
When you reached outer space for the first time, what was the first thing you saw? And how did that thing make you think and feel?
Right, I'll repeat the question in case everybody couldn't hear it. I think what you asked me was like, what was the first thing you saw when you looked out into space, you know, through those windows or when you got to space, and how did it make you feel? And that's an interesting question. I'll talk about the first time I went out on a spacewalk, and it was out the shuttle's airlock, and you actually come out on your back. So I came out on my back and I was looking up, but the way the space shuttle was oriented, that was facing the Earth. So my first view as I poke my head out of the airlock, I'm looking out at like this huge, beautiful shot of the Earth. And it was just so beautiful and it was awesome. So that, like, the one word that I would use is just awe. It literally took my breath away. And I stopped. So I stopped there with my hand. I'm halfway out of the airlock and I'm just looking up at the Earth. And I just paused to take it all in. And it took me a second. I don't know how long I was laying there or floating there. And then I thought, you know, oh gosh, I've got a lot of work to do here. I've got to get going. It's like, focus, get back to work. But it was so beautiful and was just so amazing, that view, that it just totally distracted me, and it just drew my eyes to it. We had practiced our spacewalks dozens of times, and we actually practiced in a big swimming pool down in Houston. It's 40 feet deep, and it's 6 million gallons of water. And we could put the Hubble telescope in there and the space shuttle mock-ups, and we actually put on our suits, and floating in water is very close to what it's like to float in space. So that's the way we train to do these spacewalks. So on all these training runs, though, you have all these divers that are around you. You see the bubbles, and you see the pool floors down there. But in this case, I came out, and instead of seeing all those things, instead of seeing the pool floor, there's the Earth. So it was the one thing that, we had done so much training, and I felt like I was prepared, but that was the one thing that, no one could have prepared me for, is just that first initial view of, looking at the Earth just through my visor, no windows, no nothing. There was just nothing between me. And there it is, 300 miles away, and we're screaming across the Earth at 5 miles a second. So it was just a really, really intense moment there. And it just caused me to just pause and take it all in.
It really sounds so amazing, and I know that it had to be breathtaking. So thank you for sharing that with us. We're almost out of time, but I did have one last question that I wanted to ask, and that is, have you ever been asked to spend the night at the space station?
Well, yeah. So one of my trips to space was to the Hubble Space Telescope, and we were just on board the space shuttle. So you saw how we were all sleeping there on the walls of the space shuttle, and on the ceiling. But my second mission, we went over to the International Space Station. And so it was kind of a camping trip, and we were invited to come and kind of spend the night. We had a little sleepover at the space station. And so I had to go find a place to sleep. And I chose to sleep up in the Japanese cargo module. It's just it's like a closet, but a pretty big closet. But what I found sleeping up there was, that's where they stored all these big bags of water, which allowed that space to be really quiet. And it turns out it's good for radiation shielding too. So it was probably one of the safest, quietest places on all the space station. So I just kind of strung my sleeping bag out up there and slept. And it was the only time I ever slept in space where I didn't need to wear little, earplugs. But it was so quiet up there, I didn't even need earplugs. So that was probably my best night's sleep. And I appreciated our friends over on the space station for inviting us and getting to have that little sleepover.
That sounds amazing. Well, Mr. Good, I want to thank you so much for answering some of our students' questions today and for spending some time with us. I know you're extremely busy. I do want to send a special thank you to all of our students who submitted video questions. We had over 650 questions submitted, and we were very impressed with all of them. We did listen to all of them, I promise. But so thank you to everyone who submitted those. But I want to go ahead and transition us now and introduce our next guest speaker, who is here to tell us how we can all get involved in space travel. So please welcome Joseph Ranke, the Director of Club for the Future. Joseph, tell us more about your organization and what we have planned for the students today.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to, and thanks so much for having me today. So we're going to adjust some audio levels here real quick. Perfect. So I have also a really cool job, because not only do I get to work with people like Mike Good, but I get to see people building the future. And to really experience the future, we need students to get involved. And so we have a private foundation here at Blue Origin called Club for the Future, where we really want students to be inspired to pursue careers in STEM, but also we want to help you visualize a future life in space, which is exactly why I get to work with Mike, to put them in front of students like this and really help paint that larger picture of what it's like to be up there, to inspire you to do the same and then to go up there and work on brand new jobs.
That's awesome. So do you want to set up our activity for the kids with the postcards?
I would love to. It's so exciting. So what we also get to do at Club is we looked at a way to try to get everyone in the world involved. And to do that, we came up with a design challenge. And it's really size and weight of a piece of paper. And we're offering every student on this planet, and especially we want every student in Kentucky to send us a postcard of that size and weight. And we're going to put it on, let me grab this guy, our new Shepard. Of course, this is much smaller than where your postcards will be, but they go right in here, which is the capsule of New Shepard, which is where we've flown people like Michael Strahan, Jeff Bezos, Wally Funk. So they go right in the same capsule as their astronauts and very important NASA payload and other scientific instruments that we're flying. And so your postcards go into these, they look like little dressers that you'd have in your bedroom, but we call them payload lockers. And we fill them full of postcards. We fly them to space, where they go up to the Kármán line, which is the international border of outer space. And of course, the capsule pops off and then it floats right back down to the West Texas desert. And when they come back to Earth, we stamp them flown to space. And so students get a space flown keepsake returned to them. And what it really does, if you really think about it and step back, is what's simple about a postcard is really fun and accessible. And you could draw, you could write. It's really up to you what you do with your postcard. It could be a letter to mom, or you could just tell us about your vision for the future life in space. But when you get it back, what's happened is 3 really cool boxes have been checked. One is you get to see an object that's actually been to space, something that you usually have to go to a museum for, or study really hard and become the next Mike Good, where you get to see a bunch of stuff that's been to space. 2 is you get to touch it, which if you've ever been to a museum, many people frown upon reaching out and touching the Apollo capsule or finding a way to touch a moon rock, which would never happen. So you actually get to touch an object that's been to outer space. And last but certainly not least, you get to make an object. You get to make something and send it to space. And until recently, that has been incredibly expensive, incredibly competitive. Or you're working for NASA or Blue Origin and it's part of your job and you've gotten there. So we really want to give you the opportunity to make something. Send it to us. We're going to put it in outer space and get it back to you so you can check all 3 of those boxes.
Well, thank you, Joseph. I know we're really excited about kicking off this project here in Fayette County and in the state of Kentucky and giving all of our students that opportunity. We're excited about the partnership with Club to the Future moving forward. So, okay, kids, now it's your turn to get involved.
Sure, why not? And Mike's still with us, which is amazing. So he can talk to you even more about making stuff and sending it to space.
Awesome. Does he have anything else that you wanted to add before we turn it over to the kids? So they can start on
No,
their
please
postcards?
turn it over. I'm so curious to see what you're drawing and what sort of art you're putting on there. It's so exciting. We've seen such cool projects with this. We've seen kids draw a picture together and then break it up to thousands of small squares, send that to space, and then bring it back as a mural. We've seen individuals cut out little explorers or astronauts and put their own face on it. So you're sending yourself to space. When I joined Team Blue, I had a little child at the time, and I put his footprint on a postcard and send that to space. When it came back, I framed it for his mom. And so we have our own little space phone keepsake that was part of our child going to space. So what you do with the postcards completely up to you. Get really creative, hack our program a little bit, and we're really just excited to see what you send us.
That's awesome. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up the webinar portion now and turn this over to the classes around the district that are watching live, that have kids and postcards that are ready to get started. We'll share a little bit of footage of the classes that are here working, and then we'll wrap up in just a minute. Thank you all so much.
Fantastic. Oh, no, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much for having us. This was so exciting, and it's such a pleasure to be part of the Fayette County School District.
Yes, we are thrilled to be partners.
Amy, what are you going to put on your postcard?
Oh my gosh, Joseph. I don't know. I'm going to have to get creative because it's pretty exciting to send something. And by the way, adults, you get to send a postcard to space too. So,
Absolutely. Mike, what'd you put on your first postcard? I know we've done a few together.
Oh gosh, my daughter is a second grade teacher in San Antonio. And so I got to go to her class too. And we did this with her class and saw some pretty amazing things. I can't, let me think about that. That's a tough question.
We've done
You're
quite a
making me
few of them
remember.
these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I actually drew a picture of the Hubble Space Telescope. It obviously has meaning for me since I've been there. But to me, that's like the first step of exploration, right? We use the Hubble telescope to look at these faraway stars and galaxies, and we're seeing this light. Some of the, we're looking back in time in a lot of ways, like 13 billion, that's billion with a B, years ago, it's some of the first light from the universe. And so these pictures that Hubble sends us, sends down to Earth to us, is really that first step in exploration of, before we can go there and travel to those places, we can at least see pictures of what they look like. So to me, that's just sort of the kind of a cool part about, space flight and exploration. I think exploration is so important, but that first step is just getting a picture of what it might look like far, far away.
Yeah, I love that. A little bit of history just right there.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think another thing that really sounds interesting to me in terms of those postcards is thinking about what is your dream? What is your next big project? What is your goal? If your dream and your goal can make it all the way to space, then, absolutely you can pursue that. And so I would encourage our kids to think about that as well.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter how old you are, you still got dreams and goals. So lots of ways to move forward.
That is so true. You are never too old or too young to dream. So that's what it's all about. No dream is impossible.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up for today. I want to thank everybody who was able to join us live, or if you're watching this a little bit later on the replay and working on those postcards as well. Keep an eye out for more upcoming events with Blast Off Bluegrass, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.